If you watched the previous video about writing time, you heard me argue that writing time isn't found, as though you can simply look beneath your bed and poof, there it is. Writing time is made. That video was about structure, and in this video, I want to make that structure concrete, because once you stop waiting for perfect writing time, the next problem shows up immediately. You sit down and you think, oh, write for 3 hours. And that sounds responsible. But it raises a very simple question. Write what? I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Teaches, and today we're talking about why most academic writing plans fail before the writing even starts. The biggest writing problem in academia is not skill. It's miscalibrated planning. Most writing stress comes from the gap between how long we think something should take and how long it actually does. And that gap gets wider because of two problems that work together. First, we underestimate what writing actually includes and the time it takes us to do it. Second, we don't know what success even looks like. So let's start by making some of this hidden work visible. When people say, I need to write, they usually picture one thing: sitting at a keyboard, producing sentences, but that's only a small slice of what writing actually involves. Inside almost every writing task, there's a lot of hidden labor. There's reading, rereading, searching for sources you were sure you already downloaded, skimming abstracts to see what's usable, deciding what not to cite, taking notes, reorganizing those notes, trying to remember what you were doing last time, rewriting a paragraph because now you see the problem, fixing citations, adjusting transitions, leaving notes for your future self. All of that is writing. But most people only estimate time for the last step, the typing sentences. Everything else gets treated like it doesn't exist. So the plan, it collapses. Now, let's talk about the other half of the problem. When people say, I'm going to write for 3 hours, they are naming time. They are not naming work. 3 hours is a container. It is not a task. And if you don't define the task, you don't have a way to recognize success. You can spend 3 hours rereading the same paragraph, moving sentences around, fixing commas, and second-guessing word choices, and still walk away feeling like nothing happened. Not because nothing happened, but because you never decided what counted. Writing plans fail when they measure something like effort instead of outcomes. This is why people finish long writing sessions feeling exhausted and more behind than they were when they started. Definitely not speaking from experience here. Totally speaking from experience here. They worked, but they can't say what they accomplished. And now I want to say something very directly. Putting write dissertation on your to-do list is nothing but tomfoolery and ridiculousness. It's not ambitious. It's not motivating. In fact, if anything, it's meaningless. Even write literature review isn't much better. Those are not tasks. Those are massive intellectual projects that contain months or years of work. And the moment you put something like that on a to-do list, you've guaranteed failure. Because you cannot do a dissertation. You can only do the smaller pieces that make one possible. And this is one of the biggest hurdles people run into and don't quite know how to get over. They know what the finished product looks like. They can picture the bound dissertation or the published article, but they don't know how to break that project down into actually doable tasks. And because they don't know how to break it down, they also can't estimate how long anything will take. So everything feels endless. And this shows up constantly with literature reviews. People write work on lit review as if that's a coherent action. But a literature review isn't one thing. It's reading specific articles, annotating them for particular questions, comparing claims, grouping sources, drafting a paragraph that actually makes a decision, revising that paragraph once you see the argument more clearly. Each of those is a task. Each of those takes time. The same is true for articles. We don't just write a manuscript for an article. You draft a section, you revise an argument, you integrate sources, you respond to feedback, you fix structure. When you stop putting entire projects on your to-do list and start listing the tasks that make up that project instead, two things happen. First, the work becomes doable. Second, time estimates start making sense. And that's the bridge most people never get shown. Now, let's make this concrete. Imagine telling yourself, I'm going to write a 2-page synthesis. Now, 2 pages doesn't sound like much, so you estimate maybe 2 hours. But here's what actually happens. You reread the articles you're synthesizing. That's going to be about 30 to 45 minutes per article if you're managing your information efficiently. You then take notes that let you compare them. That's another 30 minutes right there. You realize one source doesn't quite do what you need, so you search for another. That's an additional 20 to 30 minutes, assuming you don't fall down the Google Scholar rabbit hole. You outline the synthesis so you just don't summarize everything. There's another 15 to 20 minutes, and then you draft. The first page takes longer than expected because you're still figuring out what your argument is. Then you revise it because now you see what you're actually trying to do. Then you clean up citations. Do you not have a citation manager? Then you leave notes for where you'll pick up next time. And suddenly what you thought was 2 hours is now easily 4, 5, 6. And this isn't because you're inefficient, because you were honest about the work. And this is where the metrics come in, not productivity metrics like word counts, not optimization. I'm talking personal baselines. A baseline answers one simple question. How long does it take for me to actually do this kind of work? Not in theory, not on a perfect day that doesn't exist, in real conditions. Here's how you build one. Pick a common task, something that you already do, reading and annotating one article, drafting one paragraph with integration, revising a section for clarity. Track these things. Log when you start, log when you stop. Notice the kind of work you did. Reading, writing, revising. Do this across multiple days. 2 weeks is fairly ideal to give you a general sense of larger patterns. Now, let me be clear, because this is not a shaming exercise. You are already doing the work. If anything, this is a shame avoidance exercise, because once you know real numbers, you stop setting yourself up for failure. You stop promising work to yourself you couldn't possibly complete and then blaming yourself for not being a superhuman. This is calibration. If you're thinking, but doesn't this take the romance out of writing? That's worth pausing on. Are we writing for aesthetic vibes, or are we writing because it is part of the work we are trying to do in the world? Because those are two very different things. Lawyers track billable hours. Surgeons estimate how long a procedure will take. That doesn't make their work mechanical. It doesn't erase judgment or care. And it doesn't mean that estimates are inflexible. We are not seeking ultimate supreme efficiency. We are not seeking speed. We are not seeking maximum output. We are seeking realistic, professional judgment. How long does this work actually take under real conditions? And once you have baselines and once tasks are clearly defined, planning changes. Instead of saying, I'm going to write for 3 hours, you can say, I'll annotate one article, I'll revise the claim in section 2, I'll draft one paragraph that integrates 2 sources. Now time has something to attach to. Now success is visible. Now progress feels real. And here's the payoff, because when planning is calibrated, you stop interpreting normal writing friction as a personal failure. You stop panicking when something takes longer than expected calmly because you expected it. And you keep the work alive without constant self-critique. If this made writing plans feel a little less mysterious, that matters. Writing doesn't fall apart because you're bad at it. It falls apart when the math is wrong. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one.